I'm going to start here. Angel Reese wants credit. She's not getting enough credit. She did this too. She taunted Caitlin Clark. She made this whole thing. The reason why WNBA is up is because of Angel Reese.
Did you catch what Jason Whitlock just said about Angel Reese? He didn't just push back. He completely dismantled the flawed logic behind her demands for a bigger paycheck. While Reese and Carrington are out here talking about sitting out unless they get more money, they're conveniently ignoring one major issue. The numbers don't back them up.
I went from liking Angel Reese a little bit to now I don't like Angel Reese. I'm back to like, she's just bad news.
The WNBA is bleeding $30 million a year, yet some players are demanding bigger paychecks like the money is endless. Jason Whitlock didn't hold back, calling out their entire approach, saying they're playing checkers in a chess match. Is this one of the most unrealistic contract demands in sports history?
And, you know, she's fallen right in line with the rest of the WNBA. She's just an angry feminist.
Think Angel Reese's demands make sense? Jason Whitlock just dropped a truth bomb that completely dismantles that argument. While Reese and others push for bigger contracts, Whitlock exposed a harsh reality about the WNBA's finances that most fans have no idea about. He didn't just disagree, he pulled back the curtain on the uncomfortable truth behind women's professional basketball.
They have a sit down on Angel Reese's podcast and start talking about the money they want and what the WNBA is planning. If they don't get there, the players don't get their money.
When Angel Reese takes to her podcast to argue that WNBA players deserve bigger paychecks, Jason Whitlock points to a brutal truth. The league has been drowning in financial losses for years, and we're not talking about minor setbacks. The WNBA loses around $30 million every single year. Just think about that. A league bleeding money at that rate is somehow expected to hand out even bigger salaries? Make it make sense.
This kind of talk, and they're not talking about this season, they're talking about next season, their collective bargaining agreement. This is a league that averages losing $25–30 million a year.
Whitlock didn't hold back in his criticism. He straight up called out the unbelievable level of entitlement these players are showing while competing in a league that's barely staying afloat. But the harshest part? He argued that given the WNBA's financial struggles, players shouldn't be asking for more money. They should be paying to play. Let that sink in. Can you imagine any other pro athlete being told they should pay just to step on the court? That's how bad Whitlock thinks things have gotten.
And these women are talking about, if we don't get what we want, if we don't get what we deserve, if you got what you deserve, you'd be paying to play in the WNBA.
What makes Whitlock's argument hit so hard is how he highlights the massive gap between what these players think they're worth and the brutal financial reality. While Reese and others insist they deserve more, Whitlock points to the only number that actually matters: the WNBA's $25 to $30 million in annual losses. His question is simple: how can you demand a bigger slice of a pie that doesn't even exist?
NBA, but to be fair, and you're right about that, silence is golden, and sometimes less is more when it comes to players talking and using their platform and getting out their message.
Whitlock took things up a notch when he responded to Reese's threat to sit out if her salary demands weren't met. His take: go ahead. He all but dared her to follow through because, in his eyes, it wouldn't make a dent in the league's success or viewership.
I wonder, though, if the average WNBA player that none of us knows is actually saying, hey, Angel, would you shut the f*** up? Seriously. Because this does not help the perception of the league.
Whitlock's response wasn't just about calling Reese's bluff. It highlighted a much bigger issue unfolding in real time. The non-stop social media presence and endless podcast rants from today's athletes are reshaping how fans see them, and not in a good way. According to Whitlock, WNBA stars aren't just hurting their own image. They're actively sabotaging themselves, one tweet and one podcast at a time.
You know, Steve, when I watched that video, one of the main thoughts that goes through my head is just like, overexposure.
Have you noticed how nearly every athlete today has a mic in their face 24/7? Whitlock didn't hold back, calling out the non-stop interviews and endless podcasts, saying players are overexposing themselves without realizing the damage they're doing. Instead of building intrigue, they're stripping away the mystique that once made sports stars feel larger than life.
Just overexposure. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody is getting interviewed nonstop. Everybody's putting themselves out there. and they don't understand they're harming themselves.
When Whitlock says Angel Reese is playing checkers while everyone else is playing chess, he's calling out a major misstep. These players are airing every complaint, demand, and frustration for the world to see, without thinking about the long-term consequences.
We're getting too much exposure to Angel Reese and Dejanay Carrington and the rest of these players. And so athletes from previous generations that didn't have podcasts, didn't have social media.
Back in the day, fans only knew their favorite athletes for what they did on the court. Michael Jordan wasn't hopping online to vent about contract talks or share his opinions on league policies every other day.
They had the advantage of, we didn't know much about them. We didn't know how greedy, entitled, stupid, we didn't know because they weren't overexposed.
Whitlock drove this point home, explaining that past generations of athletes had an advantage. They weren't overexposed. Fans didn't see their entitlement, poor decision-making, or lack of strategy. But today's players? They're constantly on podcasts and social media, putting every thought on display, often revealing sides of themselves that make fans question their credibility.
These guys are overexposed and they're playing a game of checkers in a game of chess.
Reese and Carrington's podcast discussion is a prime example of this misstep. By openly talking about striking and pushing for higher salaries, they're not just making their stance clear, they're exposing their entire strategy to league executives and fans, many of whom might not be on their side. Even worse, they risk stirring up division within their own locker rooms.
This is just a bad look for the WNBA. Angel Reese just wants content for her podcast. She's playing checkers in a game of chess.
Can you imagine what some WNBA players must be thinking right now? Whitlock sure can. He suggests many are probably frustrated, wanting Angel to stay quiet. Every time Reese speaks out on these issues, she risks damaging the league's reputation and making it even tougher for all players to gain public support for better pay and conditions.
To be fair to the rest of that league, I wonder how many other women are thinking, hey, Angel, be quiet. Be quiet. You make a lot of other money doing other things. We actually like this job and need this job. We're all working for a vision. Don't ruin it for the rest of us.
When it comes to players who might be thinking, Angel, please stop talking, there's one major oversight in Reese and Carrington's entire argument, one that Whitlock wasted no time pointing out. How can you have an entire conversation about WNBA player value and leverage without once mentioning the name Caitlin Clark?
And if I'm an average, everyday WNBA player who appreciates what we have, I'm thinking, would you just be quiet? Seriously.
Whitlock wasn't about to let that conveniently timed silence go unnoticed. He called out how the two players most vocal against Caitlin Clark somehow managed to have an entire discussion about WNBA player leverage, without once mentioning the one athlete who's actually driving record-breaking attention to the league.
The WNBA was founded in 1996 and has never made a profit in 29 years. Question for the business gurus. Can you think of any other for-profit business in America that is 29 years old, has never made a profit, and still exists? I honestly can't. The WNBA may be the...
What's most intriguing is how this ties directly into Whitlock's bigger point about Clark's future. If the WNBA crumbles under financial strain, where does Clark end up? She doesn't disappear. She becomes the face of whatever new league or opportunity arises. While others are caught up in the present, Whitlock is looking 3 moves ahead. So what do you think? Are we watching the downfall of the WNBA in real time? Or is there still a chance to turn things around? Drop your thoughts below.